What was the two dreams that Pharaoh had? Do you recall? The two dreams that Pharaoh had that Joseph gave the interpretation of. I'm sorry? Yeah, you had seven fat cows come up out of the river, and then there were seven what? Lean cows that came up, and they devoured the seven fat cows, but they themselves grew no fatter. If we could get the recipe for that, we could all lose some weight, couldn't we? Then also there were seven grains of corn that were great, fat ears of corn. But then there were seven lean ears of corn that came up, or stalks, and devoured the seven that were fat, but they didn't grow any fatter themselves either. So we had those two dreams, and Pharaoh was concerned about this dream. His magicians could not interpret the dream, but there was a man whose dream had already been interpreted by Joseph, and who was that? That was the butler. Yeah, he didn't fare well, did he? And so he said, "Oh, I do remember this day my fault." After 2 years. And so he said, "There is a man who can interpret dreams." And so Pharaoh calls for him, brings him up out of the dungeon, if you will. He gets cleaned up, and he goes and stands before Pharaoh. And he says, "I'm not the one who gives the interpretation, but God." So then he begins to tell him what is going to happen. So what do the fat cows and the fat grains of corn or ears of corn, stalks of corn, what do they represent? 7 years of plenty. 7 years of plenty. But then what's going to follow that? 7 years of famine. That's going to come. And he says, God has said that this is what's going to happen. And he has given you two dreams, because the two dreams are one. Interestingly, just for your notes, Echad is the word for one, E-C-H-A-D. Now you don't have to know that to go to heaven. But it's a compound unity. And the hero Israel, the Lord our God, is one Lord. But there are three persons. Sometimes people argue there's only one person in the Godhead, one God. And so there are three persons who share that divine nature, that one divine nature. Husband and wife are said to be what? One. That's the same word. Doesn't mean they're one person. He didn't mean there was just one dream. When he says the two dreams are one, he's saying there's one purpose, a main purpose to this. And so we learn that the famine will come. By the way, Joseph has two sons. Do you remember their names? Manasseh is one of them, and Ephraim. Now that's significant. You remember us reading earlier when Reuben, who happens to be the eldest, he was the son of Leah, by the way, Reuben was, went into his father's concubine. And because of that, if you read I tell you what, let's just do it. Let's go over to 1 Chronicles, I think it's chapter 5, verse 1. 1 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 1.
Sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's couch, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, so that he could not be enrolled.
Okay, he lost his birthright. And what's going to happen is Joseph, yes, it is Jacob, Israel, will adopt the two sons of Joseph. Later on, we'll read that. And you have Manasseh and Ephraim then listed in the tribes of Israel. And so Reuben lost that inheritance because of what he had done. And we don't have a record of that when the occasion happened, But you can also read in Genesis chapter 49 where there's a curse placed upon Reuben for what he had done. He's unstable as water, it says. When I say a curse, he's not going to prosper. And so all of that then comes about. But anyway, he names his sons Ephraim and Manasseh. And Manasseh means forgetfulness or forgetting. God has made me to forget my home and all of the toil that I've been through. And so that's what the word Manasseh means. Now, that to me is significant. He said, He's made me to forget all my toil and my father's house. He has made me to forget my father's house. What does that sound like to you? See, you know, we always look forward to going home, don't we? I'm sorry? Well, I think he's thinking, well, let me back up just a little bit. We know what happened to Joseph, don't we? He was sold. Jacob did not know that. But Joseph does not know that Jacob does not know that. It is not really that far from Hebron on down into Egypt. And at least 13 years now have passed. Do you think that Joseph might be wondering, why doesn't my father come get me? Why doesn't any of my family come and get me? And it looks like all hope then that that's going to happen, that his family's not going to come and get him, and he's been in prison, you know, this period of time. How old was he when he was going to check on his brothers and they sold him? You know, they wanted to kill him, but then they sold him instead. He was 17. And here in our text, we learn that when he is exalted, he's 30. So it's been 13 years. And we'll note that there's a big difference sometimes. If you look at a picture of yourself when you were 17, and then a picture of you when you were 30, there's a lot of changes that take place sometimes in that. And but the brothers are not going to recognize him. But it looks like to me when he says, when he names his son Manasseh, he's made me forget my home. It's almost like I've given up on going home. I'm not even worried about that anymore. I'm down here in Egypt, and he's second in command to Pharaoh. It doesn't look like he's planning on going home. And in fact, he doesn't until he dies, right? Because they embalm him and take him back. He's not buried in Egypt. He's going to be carried back into the land of Canaan. So that's just a little tidbit of information that might be a little more as we dig just a little bit deeper. Okay, so the famine now, but let me ask you this. Why do you think there's a famine? Well, of course, there's obviously that can be a natural thing, but it looks like to me that this is a providential famine in order to get Israel down into Egypt, in order to get Jacob, you see, in the family, to come down into Egypt. God had all of this already planned, didn't he? And so we see it, and Joseph begins to realize this a little bit later on, and when we get to the end of the book. Okay, so now then there's a famine throughout the land, and yet they've been wise enough to store up all of this food, and Egypt now is selling food. Pharaoh is selling food to the people who are without food. That was based upon what Joseph advised him to do. So Joseph is exalted. Oh, yes. If they hadn't had that revelation, and Pharaoh obviously believed Joseph that, okay, here's a man who can interpret dreams. That's why he calls him Zaphnath-Paaneah. That's his other name. If you need a child's name. By the way, we read over and earlier that the man had two sons, and their names were Huz and Buz. So if Huz and Buz doesn't work well for you on your children, Zaphnath-Paaneah is still open too. All right, but that means interpreter of dreams. So when Jacob, now we come to chapter 42, and we see that the 10 sons are sent down to Egypt to buy corn or grain. Now when Jacob saw that there was grain or corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why look ye one upon another? In other words, we sit around here idle. We're not going to get any food this way, right? Behold, I've heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. He sends 10 brothers. There's another brother whom he does not send. Who does he not send? Doesn't send Benjamin. You may recall that Benjamin's brother is who? Joseph. Those are the only 2 children directly right from Rachel, right? He does not want to lose Benjamin. Not that he wants to lose the others either, but he definitely doesn't want the young one, Joseph's brother. And so he says, but Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brother, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. So they come down into Canaan in order to buy grain, buy some food. And now in verses 6 through 20 of this chapter, the brothers appear before Joseph. Oddly enough, at least 13 years have gone by. And Joseph was governor over the land, and he it was that sold to the people of the land. Verse 6, and Joseph came, and Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Yes.
You know, sometimes when, this is just what I remember growing up, when you see people out of place that you would expect them to be, that even if you recognize them, you don't recognize them.
Yeah.
I guess when I was a certain age, I lived across the street from a store, and I saw the lady every day, because we went to the store every day to buy those penny cookies.
Yeah.
But when I saw her in another place, I'm just looking at her because she's talking to me, and I'm like, I don't know who you are.
Right.
And I didn't know who she was until she told me.
And it's interesting. Now, do you think I would have had this is Billy Bland guessing, okay? Guesstimation. He's probably dressed like an Egyptian. He's second in command to Pharaoh. It's been 13 years. They do not expect him to be there. They don't know where he is. And Joseph doesn't speak to them in their language, in the Hebrew language. He's speaking in the Egyptian tongue. He understands everything they're saying. They don't understand him. And so they're not expecting to see him here. And so here's second in command. I mean, you don't sell 17-year-old boy. Next time you see him, he's basically Pharaoh. But I find it interesting that they bowed themselves down with their faces to the earth. In Genesis 37, 7 through 9, this is what he had dreamed. The sheaves bowing down to his sheaf as they were out there gathering the grain. And then the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down before him. And even Jacob reproved him over that. You think your mother and dad and your whole family is going to bow down to you? But then the Bible says, but Jacob basically pondered on those things and thought about them. And he's going to come down later on, and that is going to happen when Jacob and the whole family come down. All right, so basically, this was a prophecy. These dreams were prophecies. Hebrews 1:1, God who at sundry times and diverse manners. Well, this is one of those diverse manners that God was revealing these things. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them. But he made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, whence come ye? And they said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. Okay, he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed, and said unto them, ye are spies You've come here to see the nakedness of this land. You're trying to come in over here. Maybe you're going to come in and go back and report what you found to others who could maybe come in and conquer us. He obviously knows that's not the case, but he's humbling them, really. Oh, no, we're not spies. We've come here to buy food. And I find this also very significant. We're not here to, he said, oh no, you've come to see the nakedness of the land. He says, thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, as Benjamin, and one is not. One is not. They didn't know it was not speaking to them. Okay? He could have said at this point, let me introduce you to not. But he doesn't do that. Joseph said, no, you're spies. And here's the way that I'm going to prove that you're not spies. You all are going to stay here, and only one of you return to the homeland. You bring your brother back down here. Let one of you do that. And then he puts them in ward or in prison for 3 days. Those are some bad days for them, aren't they? And Joseph said unto them the third day, this do and live, for I fear God. He lets them know that he believes in God. And I respect God. I worship God. So he's changed his mind. Rather than sending only one, he says, I'm going to keep one of you here. And all of the rest of you go back. And in order to get your brother back, you've got to bring the youngest brother that you said that he's at home. In other words, he wants him to bring Benjamin. Okay? And so, if your words are true, notice what they did in response to this. And they said one to another, we are very guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. You know, the Proverbs writer says, the wicked flee when no man pursueth. If you're speeding and an ambulance comes up behind you with a siren on, you say, oh, caught me. It's an ambulance, though. The wicked flee when no man pursueth. When you've done wrong, you interpret things happening to you as because you've done wrong. And they have a conscience here. Evidently, they didn't act upon it earlier, though, because you think about it. All of this time, they've never told Jacob really what happened. Out of all of them, none of them have gone to Jacob. When they saw Jacob crying and would not be comforted, they still did not reveal that Joseph, they allowed their father to believe that Joseph was dead. That was cruel. That's right. Because your hatred, the hatred for the brother evidently was greater than the love that they had for their father. Maybe they're thinking, he'll get over this. They had a hatred for Joseph there earlier. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Joseph was the favorite. That's a good point. That, okay, if we go and tell him now, it's not going to go well with us. And so there's let's just let sleeping dogs lie, right? Well, sleeping dogs that are not dead, they sometimes get up, right? And so that dog's going to rise again. And I find it interesting. They wanted to kill Joseph. Reuben interceded for him. Reuben wanted to deliver him and take him back to his father. But when he got back to him, they had already sold him. But here's what is also interesting. It shows that they put him down in this pit. Then they sat down and eat. But here's the thing. They said, let's don't kill him. He is our brother. I mean, That's hard. That's like, oh, okay, we'll just sell him. We'll never see him again. He'll just go be a slave all the days of his life. That's probably what they were thinking. And who knows what they're going to do to him. They may kill him. But at least we didn't kill him. He is our brother. And they sat down to eat. They were not overly concerned. So they're hard in their hearts. Well, but when he hears them say this, he says, well, verse 23, and they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. So they're having to interpret everything Joseph is saying to them, but he understands them. I have found that to be the case in traveling into foreign countries. Just because they don't speak English normally doesn't mean they don't understand English. And you can get into trouble sometimes if you're not careful with that, because they do understand English. And he turned himself about from them and wept. I remember, did I tell you the time I went and tried to order, I wanted a liter of water. Now, I had tried to order stuff earlier, and it didn't go well. I tried to buy a Russian hat, and I was asking for a dog in Russian. I was trying to learn some Russian. I wanted a shapka, right? But I was asking for a sabaka. The word sabaka is dog. And they're looking at me like, who was this crazy guy want? They didn't have a dog for sale. But I finally learned enough, and so I went to this kiosk, and I asked this lady, I'll go up there. No translator was with me. And this lady behind the stand there in her kiosk, I said, Izvinite, pожалуйста. Excuse me, please. Один aqua minerale без газа, пожалуйста. That's one, один is one. I couldn't say liter. I had to point to that. That один, aqua minerale, you can see the word aqua. Minerale, mineral water. Без газа means still water, no gas. That's what it literally means. Pожалуйста is please. I was proud of myself. She reached up and got that water, and she brought it back to me, and I didn't have any suspenders to pop, but I was thinking I did pretty good with this. And then when she handed it to me and I paid her, I said spasiba, which is what? Thank you. She looked at me and she said, you're welcome. She understood English, and I thought, wow, I could have just come up here and ordered it in English, but most people did not. So she would have understood, most likely, had I just ordered it in English. But that's about all the Russian I knew out of the 21 trips I made. I learned how to get water. I can get some water, and I can get some bread. It's kleb. I got a hat. Yeah, I got a hat. I'm sorry? Somebody said something? I got a hat. I can get a dog and water. Interestingly, white bread is Billy Kleb. Billy Kleb, I can remember, right? White hair and Kleb. When I first went to Russia, I got a phone call in the middle of the night, and it was a Russian, speaking Russian. I had spent a year and a half in Germany, and so I said, sprechen Sie Dutch? Yeah. I thought, well, that's good, because that's all the German I know, too. So I knew a little bit of foreign language. And so I was lost with that. I know what it's like not to have an interpreter. Trying to order bread previously without an interpreter, I wound up with 2 sacks of pretzels and finally got some bread. But anyway, so the Lord knew what he was doing when he confused the tongues. And Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn. He's going to send them back. And also, he's going to give them their money back to them. So the 9 are sent back with food and with money in verses 21 through 28. Interestingly, again, when they get back home and they go and they start feeding their donkeys, and they take their sacks down and they look in their sacks, what do they find? The money. Notice, if you will, in verse 28. And he said unto his brethren, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, when they were afraid, and said one to another, what? What is this that God hath done unto us? Their conscience is bothering them. God is getting even with us. So they're feeling guilty. So they report to their father in verses 29 through 38. You know what they've got to report? By the way, who did they keep down in Egypt? Simeon? Okay. They've got to tell their father where Simeon is. Where's Simeon? Well, he's in jail down in Egypt. Why is he in jail? Well, the man thought we were spies. And they're keeping him there until, because we told him that we've got a younger brother. And what does Jacob say? Why did you tell them you had a younger brother? I mean, this is, I think he's thinking this is hyper stupid of you to do this. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's it. You didn't even, you didn't have to throw that in there that you had a younger brother. And they said, well, so some of this is comical, but it's sad. But you can see what God is doing in working all of this out. And Jacob says, they're saying to Jacob, we've got to take we've got to take Benjamin and go back down there. And Jacob says, no, you're not. Poor Simeon. I mean, wouldn't you as a father hate to have this choice? Okay, what do? Do I send Benjamin down there and risk losing him and Simeon? Or do I send him down there? He says he's not going, verse 38. And he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he's left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which you go, then shall you bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. I'm not going to lose Benjamin. Simeon saying, where are they? Well, time goes on. Jacob is finally persuaded to allow Benjamin to go with his brothers in chapter 43, 1 through 14. The famine was sore in the land. Well, they've eaten up all the grain, so they're out of food again. And someone comes and pleads with the father, and I find this to be a little bit interesting because who's going to come from this tribe? And it's Judah. Judah comes and he intercedes or pleads with his father to let us go back down. The man did solemnly protest to us, saying, you shall not see my face, because the father says, I want you to go back down to Egypt and get some food. We're not going unless we can take Benjamin. I mean, the father says, no, I want you to go without taking Benjamin. But they said, we are not going unless we take Benjamin. They rebel, really, against their dad. But why do they not want to go without Benjamin? And not only that, if you go back down there and you don't have Benjamin, your life's going to be over. That's right. Oh, no, if we go back down there now with another excuse or tale, as they might say it, well then, he says, but if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down, for the man said, ye shall not see my face except your brother be with you. So they just flatly refuse to do what their father tells them to do here. Well, if they stay there, they're going to die. And that's what Jacob knows. Finally, he gives in. And by the way, Judah says, I will be surety for him. If I bring him not before, then let me bear the blame forever. We would have been back by now if you'd have let us go earlier. That's what he's trying to persuade his dad. Finally, Israel, or Jacob, now his name is Israel, said unto them, verse 11, if it must be so now, do this. Take of the best of the fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm, ointment, that's neosporin, okay? And a little honey, spices, and myrrh, and nuts, and almonds. All of these things as a gift to kind of show goodwill. I think there's probably a sermon here. Take a little honey with you, acts of kindness as we go through life. But anyway, to give to this man and double your money. Okay, you got your money back. Maybe it's just an oversight, so you be sure to give him double money. The money that you should have given, and now the money that we want here. Take your brother, arise and go, and God Almighty, the all-powerful God, give you mercy before the man, that he may send him away, and your other brother and Benjamin. And if I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. There's no other option. I've run out of options. And so they go. So the brothers returned to Egypt from verses 15 through 25. And the men took the present, and they took double their money, a hand, and Benjamin. They rose up, and they went down, and they stood before Joseph. I don't know how old. Well, let's see. I guess I could have tried to figure this out. I don't know how much older Joseph was than Benjamin. But I'm thinking how much Benjamin probably must have changed since the time Joseph has seen him. And so Joseph saw Benjamin with them. He said to the ruler of his house, bring these men home and slay and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. Wow, that's odd to them. If you're them, we're going to be invited to eat with the man who's second in command. And the man did as Joseph bade, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. They were afraid. It's because of the money. Everything's against us. You say they're so guilty. Everything that happens is bad. And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house, so they want to talk to him and said, we came down here to buy food, and when we got home, the money was in our sack. We didn't steal this money. Finally, the steward of the house says, don't worry about the money. I put your money there. They still don't know what's going on. Well, they brought the men into Joseph's house. They gave them water, and they washed their feet. They gave their donkeys provender. They made ready to set on the food. And Joseph eats with his brethren in verses 26 through 34. When Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand in the house, and bowed themselves and him to the earth. There they are bowing again. And he asked them of their welfare. Is your father well, the old man of whom you spake? Is he yet alive? He wants to know about his dad. Oh, he's in good health. They bowed down their heads and made obeisance. There it is again. In verse 29, and he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son. Is this the younger brother of whom you spake unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. Joseph made haste, for way down within deep, his inner feelings did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber and wept there. He is moved because he's seen his brother. And hadn't seen him in so long, and is this your brother? This is my brother Joseph. He didn't say my brother. Is this Benjamin? So what he does now, he washes his face, and he goes back in and he sets on bread. He set on for him by himself. He's over here eating, and by themselves, because it was an abomination for the Egyptians to eat with the others. For the Hebrews, that was an abomination to the Egyptians. And they set before him the firstborn according to the birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men marveled at one another. And he took and sent messes unto the portions of food unto them. But Benjamin's portion, or mess, was 5 times so much as all of any of their others. You know what? They're not saying a word, though, are they? I don't have a dog in that fight. We're not going to ask, why is Benjamin getting so much more than all the rest of us? They're just happy to still have their heads connected. And they drank, and they were merry with him. Chapter 44 is again interesting. he's going to send them home. But what does he do? I want you to put my cup in the sack along with the money. And then they take off going home. And then he says, I want you to pursue them. And in whose sack did they put the cup? Benjamin's sack. And I'm just going to paraphrase this very quickly. And that is, when they come there, they said, why did you take his cup? I mean, you've got the money and you took the cup. And they said, we didn't take the cup. And then they make this rash statement, whose ever sack you find this cup in, you let him die. Okay, well, I agree with that. And then they find it in Benjamin's sack. And they said, okay, the rest of you can go. We're going to take Benjamin as a captive. We're going to bring him down here into Egypt. Oh, now then, Judah makes a strong plea for him. And he goes into a very heart-rending plea. This will kill my father. If we go home without Benjamin, the old man, he will die. Because Joseph is not. And this is his brother. And this is what I have made a plea with him. He says, take me instead. And let the young child go back. And that's what we will end with that as far as chapter 44. And chapter 45, which is truly a great chapter, and because Joseph is going to now reveal himself to his brothers. And it's just an amazing thing. And also Joseph's attitude toward the whole thing, because he can see God's hand and how things are working out. So you got to come back next week to hear the rest of the story.